You're listening to Booth Talk from the After Movie Diner. And on this episode, we are exceptionally thrilled to have another member of the Canadian comedy troupe, The Kids in the Hall, on one of our Booth Talk episodes. This is really a fantastic delight. After Scott Thompson, we have the wonderful Kevin McDonald, and we get into all of it. We talk about Kids in the Hall, we talk about comedy, we talk about Canada, we talk about music, we talk about writing. It is a truly incredible and fantastic interview, just like the Scott Thompson interview was. And you really get to feel their personalities through these conversations that we're sharing with you. So if you are a Kids in the Hall fan, if you're a comedy fan, if you're a fan of Canada, or if you're just a fan of Kevin's in general, you are going to absolutely love this episode of Booth Talk from the After Movie Diner. And don't forget, if you like what we're doing here at Booth Talk on aftermoviediner.com, then why not support us over at patreon.com/aftermoviediner. That's patreon.com/aftermoviediner. Or indeed, if you do not want to support us financially, you can always support us by rating and reviewing the podcast on whatever podcast platform you use, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spreaker, whatever. Or if you just want to help us out on social media, then don't forget to like, tweet, retweet, share, comment, do all of those things. It might not make a lot of sense to you. You might not think that it makes a big difference to us, but it really, really, really makes a big difference to us. Rating and reviewing the show really helps us get found on the podcast platforms, and liking, sharing, commenting, retweeting, all that stuff on social media really, really helps get our episodes out with the algorithms that social media now use. So please do all that to support the show. And check out all our content over at aftermoviediner.com. All right, over to our Kevin McDonald interview. And how is everything with you, Kevin?
Not that horrible.
Okay. That's a good, honest answer. I like someone who doesn't just answer with the generic, everything's great, thank you.
How are you? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, considering the world today. But first of all, I want to say thank you very much for coming on Booth Talk from the After Movie Diner. It's a real pleasure to be talking with you today. I have long been a big fan of the Kids in the Hall. And to speak to Scott last week and speak to you this week, it's something of a dream come true. So thank you so much.
Yes, I saw that on Twitter. You spoke to Scott. Well, you're very much welcome. I said that out of order, but you're very welcome much.
Yeah, I spoke to Scott last week, and it was great. He was he was everything I wanted Scott to be.
He can only be Scott, yes.
Yeah, no, that was the true pleasure of it. So what I wanted to start with is, what were your first memories of comedy? What's young Kevin McDonald watching growing up or listening to growing up?
Well, first it was the sitcoms. It was repeats. Because this is like the early 70s when I'm a kid, and I remember watching Dick Van Dyke Show and Bewitched. I remember liking Bewitched because I remember thinking Darren, it was interesting that he was an actor and I thought he had comedy timing. Only I didn't know the words comedy timing.
Yeah.
But I knew that he had that thing, and I guess the reason I noticed that he had that thing was because this was the time in grade school that I was noticing that I had that thing, that I didn't think of the greatest jokes in the world, but I can get a laugh by pausing and saying it in a way that would get a laugh, like being funny more than saying funny things, like that saying goes. And for some reason, even though he's not a comedy genius by any stretch of the imagination, Dick York, the original Darren, had comedy timing. And I remember being inspired by him a lot. I was also watching a lot of Jerry Lewis movies that I thought, and I loved him as a kid because he fell, And then when I became a comedy snob in the early 20s, I didn't like Jerry Lewis anymore. And now that I'm older and I see the Jerry Lewis movies again, I realize that almost the movies he directed, almost half, maybe a third to a half every movie has brilliant stuff, and the rest is awful because Jerry Lewis, he needed a partner. Like when Jerry Lewis was writing, to say, "Yeah, that's good, Jerry. That's good." No, not that. Yeah. Don't put that. But yeah, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, no, I know. There's so many of those old comedy films you can watch where you're like, gee, if they just, cut out these 3 scenes, brought this together, moved that. Yeah, no, completely. I know exactly what you're talking about. And it's funny, your answer has sort of pulled in 2 other things I wanted to talk about. One was definitely when you sort of first started to realize you could be funny, but also there are so many sketches that delighted us and continued to delight us based on simply how you delivered lines. There's that great, for the thing that me and my friends used to do all the time is the from the Girl Drink Drunk sketch is the "Don't disappoint me, Ray." Like we used to do that all the time. And then,
yeah, I guess I do say that way. Yeah, sorry, keep going. I'm sorry.
No. Just the way you pull it in really quickly, like you don't take a pause rather than pausing and then saying it. You just run the whole sentence all the way along, and it's just hilarious. And then we also have a real favorite in the Chicken Lady stripper sketch when you say 2 cows. Just the way you say 2 cows is like one of my favorite things ever. So I just wanted to tell you that. But so you were realizing you were noticing like that comedy timing when you were even in high school.
Yes, I was, and I'll tell you a story about that. But first, I want to say about the way I talk. I realized, like by the time I was a teenager, I was a comedy student, and I had read that saying. Some people say funny things, some people say things funny, and I realized I would sort of say things funny, I should say. But the hard part in that, I'll be short in this, is that when you're touring, because you're a person like that is all about instinct and feel. And I'm not saying that's the best way to be. There's 19 ways to be a good comic. That's just the way I'm stuck with. Yeah. So once you do the same scene over and over and over, you lose that instinct and feel. And it gets sort of rusty, and then you sort of have to find a different way to do it. And sometimes that works. Sometimes the other guys in the sketch are just confused because you're doing it differently. But that's the curse of that particular one of the 19 ways to be funny.
Yeah, so when you were pulling sketches sort of in the first couple of seasons from your stage show, there were things you could work on that you'd already sort of been performing and different ways you'd done it that were performing. But when you got to the sketches on TV that you were writing anew or performing afresh, would you sort of workshop your delivery in front of the other kids, or would you sort of surprise them while you were shooting? Like how did you kind of pull in that kind of comedy performance when it was stuff that you hadn't rehearsed previously?
Yeah. These are neat questions. I never heard these questions before. Well, like it comes in different ways because we would rehearse. We had to rehearse a few times for the TV camera and stuff, and and if I was writing the sketch, I guess in a way, as you write it over and over, you figure out the way you're going to say it. But sometimes it comes out like maybe the girl drink dunk thing, the drunk thing. I don't really remember, but sometimes it comes out on take 4 when you're shooting it. Yeah, like it just comes a different way. Like it's neat to depend on instinct and feel. But like I said, it can also be a horrible thing because it can desert you if you just don't feel it. Like when I watch basketball and I see Steph Curry hit a 3-pointer from like 100 feet out, I go, why can't you do that all the time? You can't.
Right. That's a great analogy.
You have to. Yeah, you have to feel it, and that's and in a way, there's some amazing comedy robots. Phil Hartman is an idol of mine, and he seemed to have a combination. He could feel it, and I get the sense. I didn't know him. Sorry, but that he could do it over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question, but
no, it does definitely.
I'll go back to the other question, so we're all caught up because I have an answer for that. When I was a kid, I realized for sure that I was going to be a comedian in grade 4 when our English teacher made us write stories. It was like a half a writing assignment and half we had to read the stories in front of the class.
Yeah.
And I wrote a story that I thought was a funny story about our my family with my drunk dad, though I didn't mention that he was drunk, our trip to the Grand Bahama Island, where funny things happened, where I drove the golf cart into the pond, and like I made a lot of mistakes, and I made it funny, and it got like lots of laughs. But I didn't think I was a comedian then. A few months later, she made us do it again. And I thought, I remember writing, I go, well, I've done my comedy because I was a movie buff already, but now I'll write my Alfred Hitchcock thriller. And I wrote something about an innocent person being arrested for a crime. And it wasn't funny at all. And then that day in class, when I was going to read it, when they called me up, I remember I was sitting near the back of the class, and my long walk up to the front of the class, I heard everyone like whispering excited, "Oh, it's Kevin! It's going to be funny! Oh, it's going to be funny!" So when I got up there, I felt pressure to be funny. So I didn't read the Alfred Hitchcock thing at all. I pretended to turn the pages, and I ad-libbed. I guess I improvised, and I got laughs again. And I remember walking, like I got laughs, and I think they applauded. And as I was walking back to my desk, I was going, I guess I'm a comedian.
Yeah,
I don't even think I was that happy about it. Yeah.
Well, if you're a professional comedian, you're not allowed to be too happy about it. You have to be neurotic about it.
Yeah, exactly. A happy comedian can't be that funny.
No, exactly. So can you tell me about meeting and working with Dave Foley, who you worked with originally? That was the first pairing, right?
Yes.
And what sort of similarities and also what differences do you guys have that make you work well either as writers or performers or both?
Wow, these are good questions. Like, I know there's lots of similarities, and I know there are lots of differences, and I know, like, two puzzles with different pieces missing, we kind of fit.
Yeah.
I can't really explain why. I just know that in my first workshop with him, I guess he was 18 and I was 20. I had been there for a year, and my best friend at the time, the other teenager, like my best comedy friend in the workshop, Mike Myers, he was like amazing right away, and he was like the second youngest person to be hired by Second City next to Catherine O'Hara. And so this was my first workshop without him. Then another guy who sort of looked like him in a weird kind of way, Dave Foley, came to class, and we were paired together. And I won't say the old boring story I always say, but by the end of the class, it was apparent that we were a team. And I asked him to join my comedy troupe, and I didn't have one. And so I called my friend Luciano Casimiri. He said, "We got to start a comedy troupe. There's a guy in my class who's hilarious." And you feel it right away. And it wasn't just comedy. Like, we went on stage, and we had this thing in the very beginning where we could read each other's minds. Because, in improv, it was in the 80s, it was called blocking. You're not supposed to say no. You're supposed to say yes and.
Yeah.
But very early on, he would say something, and if you know a person well, you know that sometimes blocking is saying yes. He's leading me to say, he wants me to say no because he's going that way, because it's going to be funny that way. And I knew that really early on, and I was always right. And same with him and me. We just knew where we were going all the time. And I guess we're like that in real life, too. And that's like, I don't think I have a chemistry with any other Ken the Hall like that on stage. I sort of do with Mark, but not like that. And I sort of do with Scott, but not like that. And I don't at all with Bruce, because Bruce intimidates me.
So, when I was talking to Scott, he said that while you guys are great performers together, writing with you is difficult because you guys laugh at each other's things too much. And what what was interesting is when I've heard stories about the Monty Python writing room, and they talk about all it was making the six of them laugh. They just talk about whatever was funny very democratically. That works, that doesn't. They kept what worked and threw out what didn't. Talk about a little bit about sort of the writing process with the kids. I know you guys kind of broke off and wrote in separate ways and then brought it together. But how important was it to make the other kids laugh?
Yeah, there was a friendly by the TV show. Well, friendly and not friendly, but it was all for a bigger purpose. It was, you hear this in, even again in sports teams. I guess I'm a sports guy.
Yeah.
I'm not a sports doer. I'm a sports watcher. But competition.
Yes.
There was a competition thing that I really think fueled it. We love to laugh, and we also love to get jealous. So at the same time that I'm laughing at one of Bruce's brilliant sketches, I'm also getting jealous, thinking I could top that. Why didn't I think of that? Kevin, you should. And then that, and then like the same with everybody. And also it happened like so many times over the years. Still happens now. The biggest memories of joy that I have, and there's thousands of them, are sitting and writing with Dave Foley or Norm Hiscock, who became one of the writers halfway through the run of the show, and just thinking something so funny and laughing so hard. And I always say the second best sensation in sketch comedy is when you're seen as being performed live and it gets a big laugh. But the best sensation is when you're first thinking of the idea with a group of people and you're laughing so much and you're enjoying it. That's sort of the reason to be in it, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. I know exactly what you mean. I've written some stuff myself, so I feel that as well. I think almost the especially if you have a writing partner or 2 or 3 people writing together, it's that nucleus of the idea that kind of makes you all go, oh my goodness, yes, write that, that's funny. Like that bit is almost the most magical bit. It's
an exciting sensation.
It is. It's incredible, and it's sort of not matched by many other things, because laughter is great, whether it's an audience laughing at performers or whether it's 2 old friends laughing over some insane idea you could never really do, but you could just want to laugh about it. And
I think with Lennon McCartney, I say, this is our hit single. Like every time we write a sketch, I say, this is our hit single. This is our I Want to Hold Your Hand.
Yeah. So, no, I love it. When the group made the transition from stage to screen, how much did you all talk about either the start of the show, how you were going to end sketches, the linking music, the film pieces, things like that? And were there any things that you consciously wanted to avoid when you were sort of forming your half hours, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it does. We talked about it in a way for years, because as soon as like a big agent discovered us in 1985, and we didn't do the pilots in 1988, we were always working on trying to get a producer in a TV show. So there'd be various producers, and we talked about it for years. And like Dave Thomas was our producer first of SCTV, who was a big idol of ours. And in a way, he stopped working with us, because we were writing with him before we even had we sort of had a maybe deal, and he stopped working with us because he said the kids in horror are lazy. They don't do anything. There was another group in Toronto called the Frantics. Yeah, they eventually got a TV show and they're good, but they're not as good as us, I have to say, in my opinion. But he said, I work with the Frantics. I would come up with some ideas, and they come the next day with 40 sketches. The kids don't have nothing. It wasn't that we were lazy. It turned out that we were workaholics. It was that we didn't know what the show was yet. Right. And we're anal, and we're sort of thoughtful. Not that the Frantics aren't thoughtful, but it made no sense to write that, because I don't know the format that we're squeezing it in yet. And we talked about it for years, and also when you get a TV show, even HBO back then said, so how is this different than other sketch comedy shows? You hear that to this day. You hear that all the time. Yeah, I'm sure. It was really on our minds. And I guess because we were from a place called Queen Street in Toronto, which you're supposed to, it was like Greenwich Village in the 50s. Mm-hmm. We started 80s version of Beatniks. We try to be cooler. And in our pilot, you could tell that in our hour pilot that we did for HBO, it's a lot different than the show became. We didn't use very many props, and the idea was, the subtext idea was that all the sets and some of the props were made from the stuff that our characters would have found in a junkyard. Yeah. Again, it was like a subtext. So we tried to be permanent. Even when we played women, there was thought about how we would do it on the way we did it on stage. When we did it on stage, we didn't want to insult anybody. And I had a girlfriend at the time with a big red sweater, and all our fans, the audience knew that whoever was wearing the red sweater was playing the woman. And the thought was that we might do that for the TV show, to Lorne Michaels' Kill Dad. But so that was the idea for his primitive. And then you notice our first season, it's a lot of long sketches, because a lot of them were stage sketches. And by the second and third season, we were working very hard to make the shows unified, sort of like Monty Python. We were trying to do it different, but we were trying to have runners. What runners, it's a word for us, a sketch that repeats itself. like something funny happens in the first sketch, so you repeat it like 2 or 3 sketches later.
Yeah.
So we were trying to think a unified thing. And then we thought of stuff like the Super 8. We thought that made the show look different. And, of course, the band Shadowy Men, who went to high school with Bruce McCullough, we thought that made the show seem very different. But we talked about it for years before we had a TV show.
Yeah, there's a great connection, I think, probably more than any sketch comedy group or sketch comedy in general, with you guys and music, in terms of the music not... While you did obviously comedy songs sometimes, there was the music in general, the linking music, the Shadowy Men stuff is not comedic music. So I wanted to talk about that, but I also tying that in and moving us over to Brain Candy as well. There's that a scene where you bring in Butts Wiggling from the Tragically Hip. I'm also a huge Tragically Hip fan, with the whole,
great.
In my opinion, the drug is ready thing. So talk about, first of all, the music with the sketch show and using it as a tying, sort of using it as a linking device almost, and then the Tragically Hip and how that cameo in Brain Candy kind of came about.
Sure. Well, I think because Bruce McCullough went to school in Calgary with 2 of the members of Shadowy Men, and the legend is, I don't know if this is true anymore. I don't know if my memories are true anymore or if they're stories that I've heard or made up. But I think Bruce told me that once drunk at a bar, way before he knew Anick in the Hall, that he told Reed Diamond, the bass player of the Shadowy Men, if I ever get a TV show, you guys are going to do the music, which is kind of neat that it happened, if it's a true story. And then everyone moved to Toronto from Calgary, including the Shadowy Men, and we saw them, and it just seemed like if we were a band, we would have been them, because it was sort of a unique thing. They didn't have a singer. The bass carried the melody. It was sort of surf rock, spy music. Yeah, kind of James Bondish, kind of with a punky thing, but it was also really poppy, and it's like poppy and punky, and they were irreverent. The things they said on stage were kind of funny, and it just seemed, without obviously being like about us, it seemed to suit us.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
So I think, so when we were within the last year before we did the pilot, when we were working towards it, we were all pretty sure that they would be doing the music. And I remember Shadowy Men had 2 suggestions of songs for the theme song. One was the one that became our theme song, called Having an Average Weekend. And the other one was a song called Bennett's Surf, only it was spelled S-U-R-F, not like the name of the famous humorist. And the 4 of them voted for Having an Average Weekend, and I was the only one who voted for Bennett's Surf. So thank God I lost.
This is what could have been. This is Bennett's Surf. Yeah, because it's become iconic now. Just you only have to hear the first bar and you know what you're about to see.
And I think that revolutionized theme music for comedies more than the Kids in the Hall revolutionized comedy. Because the Daily Show and so many other shows for a while was using sort of spy surf music.
Right. Yeah, using more sort of because it's not straight music in terms of like sort of either traditional or dull music, but it's not overly. It's not like the Pink Panther theme. It's not overly jokey or it's
no,
not
exactly.
Not trying to do anything.
Yeah, it's hard for me to describe it too. It's unique. it's not overly comedy, but it's different.
Yeah.
And it makes sense in a comedy. And the song "Butts Wiggling," that happened. I happened to be living before my first wife left me. I was living on a street in Toronto in an area called the Danforth, where by accident musicians were living. Stephen Page from the Bare Naked Ladies was down the block.
Yeah.
And even past the block further was oh my God, I'm going blank. Who's the lead singer who's dead now from the Tragically Hip?
Oh, Gordon Downey.
Thank you very much.
Gordon Downey.
Blank.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were friends. I'm just going blank. I still can't believe he's dead. It's horrible. But I knew him a little because we'd seen each other at bars in Toronto, and I was a super fan. And he said that he was a fan of the troupe. And so I ran into him on the Danforth when he was shopping or something with his wife. And I told him about the movie. And he said, I said, we'd love you guys to do a song for it. And he said, put the script in my mailbox. So I did. He opened the door. His baby girl just been born, and his wife was sleeping upstairs, and he was whispering and rocking his baby when I gave him the script. I'll never forget that. And then 2 weeks later, we hadn't started shooting the movie yet. We were a few weeks away from that. There was a knock on the door, and he was there with a cassette, because it's the old days, and he said, I wrote a song right away. I really liked your script. And we recorded it already. I hope you like it. He said, I was particularly, in the way Gord Downey talked, it was sort of like the way he sang. He said, I was particularly interested in the rhythm of the line, in my opinion, the drug is ready. So we wrote a song around that. And that was my line. I wrote that, and I was so excited. And the kids in the hall just went crazy when I brought the cassette to the writing room the next day.
Oh, I'm sure I didn't, because it's interesting. When I was growing up, I was a big fan of the Tragically Hip and a big fan of the Kids in the Hall, but didn't know that it intersected. And then Brain Candy came out a couple of years later, and we rented Brain Candy, and all of a sudden you're going up in the elevator and we're hearing Butts Wiggling, and we're like, wait, the Hip is in this movie? Like, it was like our minds just exploded. And then when you say the line, in my opinion, the drug is ready, forever I've wondered, did that line come from the Kids and go to the Hip, or did that line come from the Hip and go to the Kids? So that is phenomenal.
And now you know.
Now I know. So it's a Kevin McDonald
I'll never
original.
Forget him saying I was exactly. Me and the Hip. I'll never forget him saying I was particularly interested in the rhythm of the line.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the drug is ready. Like, it's only he would put it that way.
Right, but and funnily enough, like with hindsight now, it seems entirely plausible and correct. It seems entirely how it should have landed. But obviously at the time you just write the line and then based on obviously the plot. But then it takes on this whole new life. It's as a Canadianophile, or however you say that word. It was
that works.
It was phenomenal for us when we were watching that. So
can I just say one more boring thing about that?
No.
Go to your next question.
No, tell me all of the boring things.
When I wrote that line, I thought, maybe I have it reversed. Maybe it should be the drug is ready, in my opinion. And I remember Bruce McCullough saying, no, it's much more interesting the other way. Because the Kids in the Horse are like that, rhythm and words and stuff. Of course. So it was amazing that Gord Downey liked the rhythm of that when we talked for a second about switching it around. I'm sorry. Go to your next question.
No. That's great. That's the movement you need is on your shoulder story from the Hey Jude Lennon McCartney sessions. Yes,
absolutely.
Absolutely. No, I love that. I love that. And these things, especially as I say, as a writer, musician, as myself, it just fascinates me, and I love all this stuff. So no, not boring at all.
It's all about rhythm.
Not boring at all.
It's all about rhythm. Thank you.
Yeah, no, definitely. So talking about Brain Candy, as I said, love the movie, and it definitely now has a strong cult following. I know it was a very difficult film for the kids to make because of lots of different reasons. But what was your feeling on writing and making the film at the time, and how do you either all feel about it, or how do you personally feel about it now with new eyes or fresh eyes or hindsight?
I like it a lot. I wish we got a better ending. If you take away the well-documented pain about it, about the wives leaving and the people committing suicide, and you just concentrate on the creative part of it. I remember it this way, that the first 2 acts, if you do the 3-act thing, like you're talking about it in writing movies, were very easy to write. It was very easy to write. Bruce sort of saw the skeleton of it pretty early, and I got it right away. And Bruce and I weren't a writing team because he's such a brilliant writer. He didn't intimidate me, but for some reason we wrote a lot together on that script, and we got it right away. Dave was busy. There's the personal thing that my best friend sort of quit the troupe. Only he quit the troupe, Dave, after he'd already signed the contract to do the movie, so he had to do it. So there was that personal thing, but just, again, to concentrate on the creative part of it, we got to the end of Act 2 really easily. Then we were stuck. We didn't know what to do after. When you think about it, writing is so hard. If it's not based on a book or anything, you have to make the choices, and there are so many choices. And all the choices, you can have fun with choices, but it's got to lead, and it's Act 3, so you have 30 to 35 pages to end it. You've got to end the story in a satisfying way, and it's a comedy, so it should be a funny, satisfying way. So it was just so hard. And then because my first wife had left me, and I was depressed, Bruce convinced me to go to a psychiatrist, and I was talking about being sad and depressed, and the psychiatrist said, the true nature of happiness is knowing that you can't be happy all the time. And I said, okay, well, thank you. And then I went to the writer's room because I would meet her once a week in the morning, and then we would go to the writer's room. And then I said, oh, my God, that's the movie. That's what the movie's about. Yeah. And once I told the kids in the hall that, I remember Bruce getting the most excited. And once we knew what the movie was about, Act 3 became really easy. Yeah. And then we worked our way to the ending. And, of course, you probably know this, there was an original ending that we shot, and then we showed a few times, and we changed, which was more depressing. Yeah. Now, in retrospect, I think that was probably the ending to do, but we didn't do it very well. And the ending that we have now sort of ends with the movie, and it sort of ends it funnier. But the original ending sort of copied the movie Brazil. Yes. Yes. Which would have been probably more in keeping with the anarchy or the anarchy of the Kids in the Hall, or the anti-authoritarian, anti-establishment Kids in the Hall punks thing. But also someone, the hero loses, someone somewhere was probably like, we have to sell this, and they knew the fight that Gilliam had over Brazil. So that's true. Yeah, and it wasn't even that was part of it, but it was also just. We didn't do it well, and it didn't work as an ending. Not that it wasn't the right idea. We just we try to make me losing. We try to get that across in a funny way. Yeah. And there's a couple scenes where I try to do it funny, where I go in the glee coma, but it didn't work. It clashed, and there was probably a way to do it right. But and definitely, I agree with you. It would have been into the anarchy of what we're about. But we just didn't do it well. And it's one of those interesting things, because I've watched the trailer recently on YouTube, because these things all crop up on YouTube. For years, I just had the VHS and then the DVD. I didn't have any of the other things. And sort of the trailer is 50% made up of material that's not even in the film. So I know. So what I wanted to know is, has there ever been any talk of, because I think the Canadian release, the DVD release that's out, is just there's no extras on the disc or anything. Is there ever been any talk of sort of, now that you guys have sort of made peace with it and like it more, has there been any talk of kind of putting together a re-release of it that actually has some of those deleted scenes, the ending, maybe a commentary or a making of or something like that? Or do you guys have no control over that side of things? We probably don't have any control over that, and we haven't discussed it. But for a year, when I go out on the weekends, sometimes people ask me to show the movie, and what I've been showing is I have a rough cut of the movie that some fan gave me a few years ago. That somehow she got from the studio. The music isn't even in it that much, but it's got 5 or 6 or 7 scenes. It's got a character of Dave's that was cut out of the movie completely. It's got a few scenes with Janine Garofalo that was cut out of the movie properly, like completely, and it has the whole original ending.
Oh my God,
and,
I need to see that somehow. I need to see that somehow.
Okay, here's the sad news. I think the other kids are getting some copies, so maybe there's some copies around. But it was such a used copy, and I showed it so many times, mine got destroyed. But I think the other kids in the high, I think I sent them all copies from this fan I was performing in Nashville, and this comedy nerd woman gave me 5 copies, and I hopefully they've taken care of it.
That has now become my holy grail, to track that down and somehow either watch it or get a copy of it. That sounds amazing. I would love that. Yeah, there needs to be, if I can be the lone podcasting voice that pushes to get a re-release of Brain Candy, then I will.
Yes. Do it.
So going on to stage shows and Death Comes to Town, when you guys sort of reformed after a few years after Brain Candy, what spurred that on, and how did that stuff come about? And hopefully they were happier experiences than making Brain Candy.
They were, except for the fact that Scott, God bless him, is better now. The fact that he was going through his period with cancer. Beyond that, it was happy. But then again, to see him work and be mad like he always was at us, like that was happy to see him have the energy to be mad at us like he always was. But it came about during our 2007 tour. We were high off the fact very early in the tour. It was the first tour we did that was all new material. Most of the other tours were like greatest hits with 1 or 2 new things. It was all new material, and every night it was sort of killing, at least in our eyes. And so we were excited by the fact that, I guess at that point we were in our mid-40s, and we could still sort of write good sketches. And so, of course, the talk came, why don't we do another movie? And we started talking about that on the tour bus, and then Bruce had an idea that sort of became Death Comes to Town. And so we would meet on the bus. I mean, we'd have to be on the bus after the show, and we would talk and come up with ideas. And sometimes we'd meet in the hotel room in the afternoon before the show. And it seemed like there were so many ideas that Bruce came up again with the idea, it's always Bruce, to make it a miniseries, because he knew that CBC would be interested, and he was pretty confident we get someone in the States interested.
Yeah.
And so we started working on that. And then when the tour was over, Mark was busy, and Dave were both busy doing TV shows, and Scott got sick. So a lot of the writing went on Bruce and I, and Bruce is the best writer in the troupe, and I think I'm pretty good. But when it was just 2 of us, I don't think we wrote the Best Kids in the Hall script. And then we had 2 weeks before, we had 2 weeks together, like a few months before we started shooting, where there were all 5 of us in the room.
Yeah.
Poor Scott was so sick because he was going through chemo, but he had a bald head, and we had a hammock in the writer's room, and he'd be asleep, and every now and then you hear him go, "No, that's not a good idea."
Bless him.
Yeah, God bless him. So we had 2 weeks, but it wasn't enough. And as a brilliant writer as Bruce is, of course, and I think I'm a pretty good writer, it would have done well to have all 5 of us like beginning to end like we did in Brain Candy. So I'm a little disappointed in Death Comes to Town, but I don't blame Bruce and I or anyone. We did our best. But the 5 of us are good because 5 of us.
Yeah, because you're credited with writing 4 out of the 8 episodes, and then there are sort of other different teams of writers that are credited for, or other duos or
Yeah.
Is that just the nature of how you had to credit it being a miniseries?
Exactly. Okay. That's the secret of TV, because we all wanted to, because we want everyone to get equal pay for the writing. You just had to credit it, and like the other 3 came up with like great jokes and ideas, but it was too little too late to like have as much of their influence as it should have. But Bruce and I planned out the whole like story from beginning to end. Though again, in the beginning, the hotel room, during the tour, in the bus in the hotel room, they had some influence. But when it got specific, with the writing of the episodes, it was really Bruce and I most of the time.
So would you think, now looking at the miniseries, you're saying that some bits you really like, some bits you don't. Do you think that there is a movie in there that would have been sort of tighter, quicker, funnier, or do you think the miniseries was still the right way to go? And would you do another miniseries in sort of a similar style?
Yes, I would with the Kids in the Hall for sure. And I think the miniseries was the way to go. It seemed like we had so many good ideas.
Yeah.
It just got soft somehow. It got by the end product, it got softer.
But there's still some wonderful. I mean, I love it. I love anything you guys do.
Thank you very much.
I'm one of those guys. But there are still some things.
I like you guys.
In Death Comes to Town that is like you wanting to keep your cat alive, like regardless of.
That's based on me. Like a lot of my ideas. That's based on. I had a cat that was. She couldn't move.
Oh no!
And I had to flip her over every hour to the other side, or else one side would get paralyzed while the shoulder was paralyzed, or she'd be able to stop breathing.
Yeah.
And I did that for a few months, and Dave would come over and said, "Kevin, you're being cruel to her. Just put her to sleep." And I go, no, she's my cat. And I paid $20,000. And we exaggerated that. So that came from the real life, and I thought that was pretty funny.
And I also like that this small northern Canadian town would have an abortionist, and the way Dave played him was tremendous. I thought that was a really funny joke as well. That's completely a Dave idea. If you know Dave, that's completely an idea Dave would think of. And early on, he got that idea, and I think that he got to rewrite that his way. That's totally a Dave Foley idea, and only Dave Foley would think of something like that. A small town abortionist. Yeah, anything to piss certain people off while watching the show. You know what I mean? It's almost like there's no one can enter a Kids in the Hall show and get out by the end of it without being like. Certain people would be like, oh, I can't watch the next episode because there's that character in it. I don't feel that way, but I'm sure there are some people who, when they found out there was
I hope so. I hope we get more stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like right now, I'm in Austin, Texas, doing the festival and doing the comedy festival. And I don't really do stand-up, but I do stories. And most of them are Kids in the Hall stories. Most of them are Scott Thompson stories, actually. And when I play a night that's just a Kevin McDonald night and the Kids in the Hall audience that come, I feel okay. But there's a few shows here that are like I'm just one comic and other things, and I'm going to be in trouble because one of the stories, to give an example, I have a few, but one of the stories I tell is about the time that Scott Thompson forced me to play an AIDS fairy in New York in 1987 when we were there, and we got attacked by the audience. Yeah. And I know that people, just hearing that, when they hear the whole story, it makes total sense. It makes total sense why Scott wrote that part. And a lot of the comedy is on me being horrified having to play that part.
Yeah.
But I know that if I'm brave enough to do it at a normal stand-up show today, where I'm just this week when I'm one of the comics, I will be in trouble.
Well, it's good sometimes to be in trouble, and things, especially nowadays, need to shake stuff up. So I like that a lot.
Yes, I guess that was my original point. That it's good to know that the Kids in the Hall can still get in trouble.
Yes,
that, and I can completely justify it. I'm not offending anyone. I make it quite clear that it was a stupid choice, though it made sense in the scene. It was a dad's worst fear when he finds out that his son is gay, and his worst fear that an AIDS fairy comes and sprinkles AIDS dust on him. Like, to me, in context, it makes total sense. Yeah. But people find it offensive.
I mean, okay. Let people find it offensive, I guess. I don't know.
Yes.
All right. Well, look.
I agree.
One very quick question. You can give a very quick answer to this. But if I didn't ask this, my friend Marcus would be like, "Why didn't you ask this question?" My friend Marcus is a big fan, a fan of National Lampoon's Senior Trip, which I know Kelly Macon directed. Yes. So I presume that's how you ended up in it. Are there any good quick stories from the making of National Lampoon's Senior Trip?
Nothing bad happened, but there's no quick stories. The only story, I'm not proud of the movie. Kelly did a great job. He just knows how to get the best comedy out of stuff. The script wasn't that great, but it was like I had the summer off, and they were filming it near my house, so I did it. But to give you an idea what I thought of the script, my writing partner, Norm Hiscock, who's a great comedy writer, he's sort of become a very successful writer. Kelly Macon, and him and I wrote a lot of the scenes together, like the King of Empty Promises, where I say "will do" and stuff. And,
yeah.
And Kelly Macon offered him, he showed him the script, and he said, "Will you rewrite this?" And Norm said no, because he said, "How many ways can I rewrite a kick in the balls?"
Yeah.
And to me, that symbolizes a lot about comedy.
Yeah.
But I can't think of any really amusing anecdote. Nothing went bad.
Yeah.
it was good. It was fun to hang out with Tommy Chong.
Yeah.
Matt Frewer was really nice. I remember Matt Frewer like taught me something about show business. Some little thing had happened where they'd taken his trailer away to give it to a bunch of extras or something, and he was chatting with me. And he was in a great mood. It was outside. It was like a bus outside on a dirt road kind of scene.
Yeah.
And he saw the producers come, and he said, "Oh, excuse me a second, Kevin. I'm just going to cross the street and get really angry." And he was almost like he was acting. And he went across the street and he yelled, and I couldn't hear them. It was like it'd be a great thing in a movie. It was like he's in the back of a shot, and you see his finger waving, and he's yelling. And then he crossed the street, and he was in a good mood, like he was like an actor acting to be angry. And he said, "I got the trailer back. If you want to join me, we'll play some music."
That's awesome.
That's how you do anger in show business.
That's a great
That was
story.
an amusing anecdote, I guess.
That's fantastic.
There.
All right, so obviously I know you have your podcast. I know you're doing a stage show. Just let people know before you head out, what are some of the current projects you're working on, and where they can find you if you indeed want to be found.
I want to be found. Well, I got my podcast, Kevin McDonald's Kevin McDonald Show. I think we're finally going to do a new one. It's on Forever Dog and, of course, iTunes. There's some interest in making it I call it a TV show. Whatever a TV show is called when it's on a streaming thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That works.
TV show.
Yeah.
TV show still works.
Web series, I guess, but I don't like web series as a name, but yeah.
Oh yeah, but I guess it works. But if you don't like it, I don't like it because I trust your instincts already.
Thank you.
And I did a pilot for Hulu, but you can't see that because they turned it down. But it was pretty good, and it was me and Bobby Moynihan, and it was actually very funny, I thought.
Oh, that's a shame. Is any idea to move that to another network or try with Netflix?
Yeah, they are trying to do that, and I know it has happened. So the odds aren't 1,000,000 to 1, but I know the odds are 1,000 to 1. But it has happened, and I bring that up in the spirit of people may not be able to see it, but I want you to know I'm working. I'm okay. Don't worry about me.
And I hear from Scott that the Kids in the Hall might have a new sketch show coming down the line. So we're all looking forward to that.
There's
Fingers
also
crossed.
some interest. Yes. I'm sure he told you because we're not allowed to tell you, but I'm assuming he told you the details, so I won't. But yeah, we're in negotiations, sort of.
All right. Well, look, Kevin, thank you so much for giving us some extra time today. It's been such a pleasure.
I really enjoyed this. Let's do it again. Interview me again. If you're not boring me, wait a year. It'll be fun again.
Dude, I will definitely, seriously, you can come on my show whenever you want. You have an open invitation, and I mean that. So please, come on the show whenever you want. We'll talk every single time. And I've put it out to their agents, but tell the rest of the kids to come on my show. That would be amazing.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, I put it out to all their agents and managers and stuff, but you and Scott were the only ones that responded. So, but tell the others because it's a good show. I think
we love to talk.
It's a good show. Yeah.
Oh, I think this show I love already, even though I was half of it. I think it's a great show.
Well, thank you so much, Kevin, and let's speak again. Have a great time and best of luck in Austin tonight.
Thank you very much. Talk to you soon, I promise.
Okay, cool. Bye now, man. Bye.
Okay, bye.